Some questions are designed not to be answered but to be avoided. Some answers are constructed not to silence but to conceal and cover up. And some hearings become the stage for moments when the head of the world's most powerful intelligence agency is cornered by a single word or sentence. This was one of those moments. Kash Patel appeared before Congress for 2 consecutive days in his capacity as FBI director. The Epstein files, court rulings, what had been released, what had not. He was prepared for long hours of questioning. His answers were set. His posture was firm. He had a response for every question, a counter for every objection. That is, until Ted Lieu projected a video onto the screen. This was not a document, not a legal argument or a tactical maneuver, and certainly not a political move. It was the voice of a journalist, a vault, and a story the public had been curious about for years, what Jeffrey Epstein had kept inside it. And that story turned into a sharp 3-minute expose in which the FBI director could not give clear answers to 3 questions, where every answer gave rise to a new question, and every silence pointed to a new suspicion, a new void. Now I'm going to break down those 3 minutes, because this is not a hearing analysis. This is a record, entered into the official transcript and etched into history, that shows not what an institution doesn't know, but what it chooses not to say. And this record is far heavier than you think. The weight of every question is measured by the past of the person who asks it. The same question carries different significance depending on whose mouth it comes from. Lieu represents California in the House of Representatives, but before he was a politician, he served as a JAG officer in the United States Air Force. He conducted investigations in military law. He personally adjudicated cases. He spent years in rooms where evasive answers did not count as a defense, where every word was held accountable. He retired in 2021 with the rank of colonel, a graduate of Stanford and Georgetown Law. Lieu was not a politician chasing screen time. He was operating with the instinct and experience of decades spent in rooms where the person across from him was expected to know the facts of their own case. Every time Patel said, "I don't know," Lieu did not hear it the way everyone else in the room did. He heard it with the ears of an investigator, and what he heard did not suppress or stop him. On the contrary, it accelerated him. Lieu began with a classic question, a deliberately simple one, because the sharpest blades emerge from the plainest sheaths. The FBI conducted a search of Jeffrey Epstein's Manhattan residence in 2019. Patel confirmed this. Among the items found was a safe. Patel stated that he did not have the evidence catalog in front of him. Pause. Read that sentence again. The FBI director is testifying before Congress in a case his own agency conducted, one that the public has followed closely for years, perhaps one of the most controversial cases in American history. And he does not have the evidence catalog. He didn't prepare it, didn't review it, didn't bring it. This wasn't forgetfulness, nor was it a lack of preparation. When you look at the steps that follow, it becomes clear this was intentional. Lieu moved forward. The FBI found the safe, correct? Patel's response was, "I accept your representation." Not a yes, not a confirmation based on his own knowledge of what his agency found. Instead, he transferred the fact to Lieu, keeping his own language clean to avoid being caught in a lie. In high-risk testimony, this maneuver has a name: strategic ignorance. By refusing to directly confirm evidence, he eliminates the risk of perjury if the full catalog is later revealed. He keeps his hands clean. This is not the language of transparency. It is the language of calculated defense. It was said that photographs were found inside the safe. Patel gave the same answer. "I accept that. I don't know." Lieu clarified the point, because he had to. This information wasn't secret. It wasn't classified. It wasn't hard to access. The New York Times reported it on the front page on July 8, 2019. Epstein's Manhattan mansion was searched, a safe was found, and the collection of photographs inside it was publicly disclosed as part of the charges filed that year. Front page news, public record, a fact everyone knew, and the FBI director said he didn't know, or chose not to know. Either possibility carries equally serious consequences. It was obvious Lieu structured these questions as a test, to lay the groundwork for what was coming. Because if a director leaves the representation of his agency's own evidence catalog to a member of Congress, then the weight and credibility of his answers to deeper questions collapse. Lieu built that foundation. Then he made his move. Lieu then brought up Michael Wolff. And the moment that name entered the hearing, everything changed. Wolff is one of Washington's most well-known journalists. He gained global recognition with his book Fire and Fury, which chronicled the first Trump White House. But for this hearing, his importance comes from something else entirely. By his own account, he was the journalist who spent the most time in close proximity to Jeffrey Epstein before his arrest. Wolff recorded more than 100 hours of conversations with Epstein over several years. Many of those recordings have been shared with the public. In a recording released in November 2024, Epstein describes Donald Trump as his closest friend for a decade. Major news organizations have repeatedly reported on the contents of these recordings. These recordings are not secret, not unknown, not classified, not difficult to access. LIEU brought up a specific anecdote Wolff described. Epstein went to the safe with Wolff. He took out the photographs, spread them out like playing cards, and showed them to Wolff, explaining what they contained. LIEU paused the video. The room went silent. Then he turned to Patel and asked, "Among those photographs, is there anything showing Donald Trump with individuals connected to Epstein's operation?" Patel, "No." LIEU, "How do you know that?" Patel responded, "This information would have already been uncovered over 21 years by multiple administrations and FBI investigators." LIEU stopped him right there. "That's not true," he said. Trump's birthday message to Epstein had not been known until the Wall Street Journal reported it. And when it surfaced, it wasn't the FBI that revealed it. Epstein's estate sent the document directly to Congress. Patel paused, a long silence. Then he said, "Good point." Those two words were the heaviest moment of the hearing. Patel had just argued that 21 years of investigation would have uncovered any significant material. LIEU responded with a documented, concrete example that surfaced not through the FBI, but through external reporting and estate disclosure. And instead of defending his claim, Patel conceded it outright. Good point is not the language of someone confident in their argument. It is the language of someone whose argument has been turned against them, and who, rather than refuting it, chooses to surrender in that moment. And that surrender now sits in the official record, permanently. LIEU moved the issue into the record. And this question may have been the single most important point of the entire hearing. Wolff possesses roughly 100 hours of recorded material related to Epstein. These are not secret. They are journalistic interviews, spanning years, shared with the media, reported by major news organizations. Legally, they are directly accessible. The most comprehensive and long-running body of Epstein testimony in Washington. LIEU asked, "Did the FBI make any request to interview Wolff?" Patel, "I did not personally make that request. I don't know whether it was made as the FBI." LIEU asked, "Did the FBI subpoena Wolff's Epstein recordings?" Patel, "I don't know." Two questions, two "I don't know" answers, for 100 hours of publicly available, repeatedly shared, legally accessible recordings. Wolff's recordings are an uncontrolled variable. Unlike internal FBI files, they cannot be classified. They cannot be hidden behind red tape. They cannot be shielded under the pretext of confidentiality. By confronting Patel with whether these recordings had been subpoenaed, LIEU was placing a critical document of choice into the historical record. Did the FBI deliberately avoid seeking this evidence, or were they afraid of what they might find? That question is now in the transcript. The answer still hasn't come. LIEU's final move led to the sharpest and most critical moment of the entire hearing. "Wouldn't it be ideal," LIEU said, "for Epstein's estate to provide all this material under subpoena? Direct, clear, without dressing it in political framing." Patel's response was striking. The estate is not obligated to provide this material, even under subpoena. LIEU paused for a moment. Then he spoke plainly. "That's incorrect. You're the FBI. You can subpoena the estate, and you should have done so." Patel pulled back. "That's not exactly how it works." At that moment, this ceased to be a legal debate. The director of the world's most powerful law enforcement agency was implying that they were powerless before an estate. With his JAG background, LIEU immediately understood what that meant. A decision not to look, covered in the language of legal limitation. If the world's most powerful intelligence agency claims it cannot subpoena records that a journalist could easily access, then this is no longer a matter of legal framework. This is an institutional reflex of protection, and in that moment, that reflex was exposed in front of everyone in the room. I accept that. I don't know. Good point. Line up these three statements from Patel and examine the pattern within them. The FBI director does not acknowledge or know his own agency's evidence catalog. He does not know whether his own agency subpoenaed 100 hours of publicly available recordings, and when his argument is turned against him, he concedes instead of defending it. This is not unpreparedness. This is the deliberate use of memory and knowledge. In high-risk testimony, this tactic serves a very specific purpose. If documents surface later or the truth emerges through another channel, the record will show that the director said, "I don't know." The risk of perjury is reduced to zero. Personal liability is minimized, and the legal ground required to investigate what the institution actually knew becomes far more shallow. But this tactic is also a silent admission. If an FBI director systematically avoids learning the facts of his own case, it suggests there may be truths he does not want to learn. Here, ignorance is not a deficiency, it is a tool, and Lieu placed that into the record, with every "I don't know." Behind every file that was never subpoenaed, every record that was never examined, every photograph left inside that safe, there is someone who has been waiting for justice for years. This hearing is not just an intellectual power struggle between a member of Congress and an FBI director. It is a record of a critical moment that determines whether decades of silence are still continuing. When a system chooses strategic ignorance over transparency, it doesn't just protect names. It delays the accountability that victims have been waiting for, and every delay extends that silence further, makes it a little more normal. Accountability is not a political choice. It is the mechanism that prevents the shadows of the past from becoming the reality of the future. And that mechanism is either sharpened by the questions asked in hearing rooms or dulled by the silence that blocks those questions. Lieu asked, "Patel's I don't know responses are now on record. Wolf's 100 hours of recordings have still not been subpoenaed. The photographs in the safe have still not been fully disclosed or clarified. And each of these gaps keeps the same question alive. What does the FBI know? And what is it deliberately choosing not to say?" Ted Lieu did nothing extraordinary in that hearing. He played a video. He asked questions. He followed the answers. He entered every "I don't know" into the record. But in Washington, even that is rare, because powerful institutions are highly skilled at deflecting the questions directed at them. Classified. "I don't know. I accept that. Procedure requires it." These are words designed to eliminate accountability. And generally, they work. Lieu's JAG background played a role in understanding exactly how these tools function. And because he understood, he didn't stop. He saw the gap in every answer and drove the next question straight into it. Patel could not give clear answers to 3 critical questions. Those 3 unanswered questions will remain forever in one of the most important legal records in the United States. And history will be written by looking at those records, by what an institution chose to know or chose not to know. Silence is also an answer, sometimes the heaviest one. See you in the next video. Subscribe to the channel. Don't miss the hidden files.